Hi, this is RGK. Today we'll talk about a very explosive top-down game, Synthetik. I love the graphics. It's in 2D, but using pre-rendered 3D models. It reminds me of the games from the late 90s, although here it's very smooth and sharp rather than bleeding pixels from everywhere. Well, it gets a bit less smooth once you start blowing up everything that moves. And I also love the style of enemies. Android soldiers, tanks and other futuristic vehicles. I just don't like some minor details regarding the environment, such as bridges or other places that are supposed to represent depth. It does not quite work here. The feel of shooting is very unique, and quite reminiscent of first-person shooters. You have to stop and stand still to become more accurate, and it's possible to pull off headshots. Weapons can jam, and the reloading system is in between simulation games and Gears of War. When removing a clip, you lose any bullets left, and when putting a new one in, there is a button to press with the right timing. The result is that this game is very technical and requires tactical play rather than spray and pray. The rhythm is very much stop and go, stop and go. You have to focus on managing your character as much as managing your opponents. It might sound weird to describe, but most in hands it works very well, and we alternate between the satisfaction of the job well done and complete panic when reinforcements show up and one weapon is jammed, the other two have not been reloaded yet. Mistakes are quickly punished, especially considering that the enemies are very dangerous and quickly come to the rescue when one of them is getting shot at. Thankfully, we have a recharging shield. We can also find lots of items such as a bear trap or an automatic orbital strike targeting enemies around you. There are tons of weapons and modules to add, and since those are not simply stats modifiers, game mechanics can sometimes be modified and change your style of play. Actually, from the very start, there are many classes to choose from and there is something for all tastes. Snipers, close quarter combat, sneaky and slippery, deployable turrets and so on. Before talking about the rest, I wanted to establish that the core gameplay loop is so solid that just by itself is worth taking the game for a few runs. And yes, if I say run, it's because this game is a rogue-lite with permadeath and procedural generation, which will disappoint many. The problem with rogue-lite is that they often become quickly repetitive to the point of hating the starting levels, which is paradoxical to the idea of procedural generation. Synthetik does some things well, such as with all the classes and quickly good weapons available. Also, colors and background styles are switched often, even for the first levels, which means that we don't have the syndrome that we can't stand seeing the first level over and over. Conversely, despite all the content packed in there, we quickly have the feeling that we are always doing the same thing, and I see two reasons for that. The first reason is that except for boss fights, all levels seem like they were made in the same mold. They are always the same patterns, like a group of enemies around a static turret, or a squad with mobile enemies. The second reason is that even though there is all that content, the rhythm stop and go that I described earlier is what you live through all the time. There is no variety in the pacing. If you want to know how to do it differently in a top-down roguelite, check out Nuclear Throne or Neon Chrome. I will talk about Neon Chrome in the distant future if I find the time, but all you need to know is that the action takes place in a mega building in the vein of Judge Dredd, and yet level layouts are not too repetitive. Nuclear Throne is repetitive from one run to the next, always starting in the desert, but within a single run there are those vast desert levels with long distance fights, then tight corridors in sewers and close quarter combat, then a world mixing static traps and very mobile enemy crows landing behind you, then another corridor level with enemies so dangerous that it's better to snipe them, then a nice world with big mechanical gorillas that rush you and you need to focus on dodging. In Synthetik, in the end, there is only the purple crystals world that is briefly slightly different in terms of fights, but it's too late and too little. So here you have it. Synthetik's issue is that it did not organize enemies and levels in a way to offer several types of challenges and pacing. When I die after a bunch of levels, I don't feel like restarting straight away and finish the game. Instead, the way I consume it is to launch it from time to time, to enjoy its nervous and tactical gunfights, and its delicious audio and visual atmosphere. So I recommend it, but rather on sale considering the price. Oh yeah, and there is also an online co-op mode. I hope you enjoyed this video, bye!